That notice you're waving around, I said, my voice steady from 3 tours in Afghanistan. It's missing the state-required certification seal, proper delivery confirmation, and board authorization signatures. Catherine's smug expression flickered for just a second, long enough for me to know she hadn't expected someone who understood legal documentation requirements. If you've ever felt that surge of power when standing up to bullies who think they can steamroll over your family, hit subscribe now. This showdown is about to become a masterclass in fighting back. I'm Jake Martinez, Marine veteran and VA communications specialist, and I've spent years ensuring critical information reaches the right people under life or death conditions. Catherine doesn't realize that improper notification procedures are my specialty, and she just handed me a document violating about 6 different state laws. Behind me, Sophia whimpered from the couch where she'd been sleeping because the HOA's mandatory landscaping project had blocked her bedroom window. That window wasn't just about light. It was about survival. Mom had specifically chosen this house 3 years ago because the east-facing window caught morning sun, helping Sophia manage her PTSD after her deployment as a combat photographer. The healing garden Mom planted before cancer took her wasn't just landscaping, it was medical equipment, each herb carefully selected to help Sophia ground herself during panic attacks. The rosemary helps with memory, Mom had explained during her final weeks, her hands shaking as she planted each seedling. And the lavender will calm her when the nightmares come. Sophia had been deployed when Mom died, and this garden was her final gift, a living prescription for healing. Now Catherine wanted to destroy it because it didn't match her vision of suburban perfection. Mrs. Whitmore, I continued, stepping fully into the doorway so she couldn't see Sophia's distress. This violation notice was never properly served, according to state statute 47-9-102, which requires certified mail delivery with return receipt. Posting it on an obscure website section doesn't constitute valid notification. Her face flushed red. You can't intimidate me with legal jargon, young man. I've been running this HOA for 8 years. And in those 8 years, have you ever actually read the state laws governing HOA notification procedures? I asked, pulling out my phone to photograph her improperly formatted notice. Because this document wouldn't hold up in traffic court, let alone a property dispute. Catherine stepped back, clearly not used to resistance. The board has spoken. Remove that garden or face daily fines starting next month. What board meeting? I asked. Because state law requires 48 hours public notice for any meeting discussing individual property violations, and I've checked your website. No such meeting was announced. The color drained from her face. As she realized I wasn't some overwhelmed veteran, she could bulldoze with bureaucratic threats. Drop a like if you've ever wanted to stand up to unreasonable rules like this, and subscribe to see how this strategy plays out. The garden stays, I said quietly, and if you want to challenge that decision, I suggest you learn proper procedures first. Because every violation notice, every fine, every threat you make without following state law just adds to the evidence pile I'm building. Sophia's breathing had steadied behind me. She could sense the shift in power even through her anxiety. This wasn't just about protecting a garden anymore. It was about protecting everyone Catherine had bullied with her unlawful tactics. "This isn't over," Catherine hissed, backing down our front steps. "No," I agreed, watching her retreat toward her golf cart. "It's just beginning. But next time you come to my door with enforcement threats, make sure they're actually valid." As her cart disappeared around the corner, I closed the door and turned to Sophia, who was sitting up on the couch for the first time in days. She managed a small smile, the first I'd seen since coming home. "Jake," she whispered, "do you really think we can stop her?" I looked through our back window at Mom's garden, where morning sunlight caught the dew on rosemary leaves. "Sophia, Catherine just handed me a violation notice violating more state laws than I can count. She's been running this HOA like her personal kingdom, but kingdoms fall when they're built on unlawful foundations. Where are you watching from? Because what happens next is going to prove that sometimes the best defense against bureaucratic bullies is knowing the law better than they do, and Catherine Whitmore just picked the wrong Marine to mess with." The next morning, I laced up my running shoes and headed out to canvass Meadowbrook Veterans Community, determined to find out if Catherine's unlawful tactics extended beyond our family. What I discovered in the first hour made my blood boil with a fury I hadn't felt since watching IEDs tear through convoys in Afghanistan. Bill Thompson, 73-year-old Vietnam veteran, opened his door with shaking hands and showed me a stack of violation notices targeting his memorial flag garden. 12 citations in 6 months for unauthorized plantings and excessive patriotic displays. His front yard was immaculate, every blade of grass perfectly trimmed around the small memorial he'd built for his fallen unit brothers. "She wants me to remove the memorial stones," Bill said, his voice cracking. "Says they're not approved landscaping features. Jake, I've tended those boys' memory for 15 years. And now she's threatening daily fines if I don't tear it down." I photographed every violation notice, noting the same improper formatting and missing signatures I'd spotted on mine. "Bill, did you receive any of these by certified mail?" "Just found them tucked in my door or posted on that website nobody checks," he replied. "Didn't know they were supposed to come different." 3 houses down, Marine widow Linda Santos answered her door with tears in her eyes, clutching a notice demanding she demolish her late husband's workshop within 60 days. The small building where Sergeant Miguel Santos had restored vintage motorcycles was now labeled an unpermitted structure, despite existing when they had bought the house 8 years ago. "Miguel built that workshop with his own hands after his first deployment," Linda whispered. "Our son Tommy still goes there to feel close to his dad. Catherine knows what that place means to us, and she's using it as a weapon." I recorded Linda's violations too. Same improper procedures, same missing requirements. But when I walked 2 streets over to Maple Avenue, the pattern became crystal clear. Catherine's friend Diane Morrison had a garden shed twice the size of Miguel's workshop, completely unpermitted, sitting in her backyard next to an overgrown jungle, violating every landscaping standard in the HOA bylaws. No violations, no notices, no threats. Drop a like if you're already seeing the pattern here, because what I found next proves this goes way deeper than anyone imagined. House after house revealed the same targeted enforcement. Army medic Sarah Chen faced citations for her therapy dog's excessive outdoor presence, while Catherine's neighbor let his aggressive pit bull roam unleashed. Navy Corpsman David Rodriguez got fined for parking his work truck in his own driveway, while board member Patricia Wells had 3 commercial vehicles permanently stationed on her property. Air Force Captain Maria Gonzalez received threats over her children's play equipment being too colorful, while Catherine's grandson's bright yellow playground set dominated their front yard. Each family showed me the same improperly formatted notices, the same lack of certified mail delivery, the same missing board authorization signatures. Catherine wasn't just ignoring proper procedures, she was weaponizing bureaucracy against families who'd served their country. "Jake," Sarah Chen said, as I photographed her violations, "we've all been dealing with this alone, thinking we were the only ones being targeted. I never realized she was going after all of us." By noon, I'd recorded 17 military families facing active violations, while their non-veteran neighbors with identical or worse violations faced 0 consequences. The evidence was overwhelming. Catherine was conducting ethnic cleansing through bureaucratic terrorism, forcing veteran families to sell below market value to escape her harassment. Standing in the community center parking lot, surrounded by families who'd served tours in Iraq, Afghanistan, and beyond, I felt the same protective rage driving me through 3 deployments. These weren't just neighbors. They were brothers and sisters in arms being attacked by someone who'd never worn the uniform or understood the sacrifice. "This isn't about property values," I announced to the growing crowd. "This is about Catherine Whitmore targeting military families through unlawful enforcement procedures, and it ends now." Veterans started sharing stories, comparing violation notices, recording the pattern of discrimination hidden until today. Catherine didn't realize she'd just united a community of people trained to identify threats and neutralize them through coordinated action. The war she'd started was about to become her biggest mistake. 3 days after our community meeting, Marcus Chen appeared at our back gate, holding a clipboard and wearing the expression of a man being forced to kick puppies. His shoulders hunched forward defensively as he cleared his throat and announced he was here for an official compliance assessment. But his eyes darted everywhere except towards Sophia or me. "Marcus, right?" I said, recognizing him from HOA meetings where he'd always sat quietly in the corner. "Come on back." Sophia emerged from the house, still moving carefully but stronger than she'd been in weeks. As she began explaining Mom's healing herb layout, pointing out the calming lavender, the memory-enhancing rosemary, the grounding sage, Marcus's discomfort became painful to watch. He kept shifting his weight from foot to foot, glancing nervously toward the street every few seconds, like he expected Catherine to materialize with a clipboard of her own. "This is beautiful work," Marcus said softly, his voice carrying genuine appreciation as Sophia showed him the raised beds designed for wheelchair accessibility. "Your mother clearly understood horticultural therapy principles." His clipboard remained untouched in his hands. No measurements, no notes, no official assessment activities. Instead, he watched Sophia's face light up as she described how different herbs helped her manage anxiety attacks, and I caught him wiping his eyes when she mentioned Mom's final planting session. "Marcus," I said carefully, "in your professional opinion as a social worker, would removing this garden impact Sophia's recovery?" He glanced toward the street again, then looked directly at Sophia for the first time. "Absolutely. This kind of healing environment it's exactly what trauma recovery specialists recommend for PTSD management." Sophia beamed at the validation, but Marcus's expression darkened immediately after speaking, like he'd revealed classified information. He fumbled with his clipboard, dropping his pen twice before retrieving it with shaking hands. "The thing is," Marcus started, then stopped, checking the street again. "Jake, can I be honest with you? Please. Proper disability accommodation procedures were never followed in your case, or any case I've witnessed in 2 years on this board." The words tumbled out like he'd been holding them back for months. "Catherine doesn't even acknowledge federal ADA. Requirements apply to HOA enforcement decisions." My pulse quickened. This was the confirmation I'd needed regarding Catherine's procedural violations extending to federal law. "What do you mean exactly?" Marcus set his clipboard on Mom's potting bench and rubbed his face with both hands. "When someone requests accommodation for medical needs, there's supposed to be an interactive process. Review, reasonable modification discussions, good faith negotiation. None of that happened here." "Marcus," Sophia said gently, "you look upset." He laughed bitterly. "I'm a licensed clinical social worker. My professional code of ethics requires me to advocate for vulnerable populations and report institutional abuse. But I've been sitting in board meetings watching Catherine target military families, ignore disability rights, and violate basic procedures for 2 years because I'm terrified of what she'll do if I speak up. Drop a like if you've ever felt trapped between doing what's right and protecting yourself from retaliation, because Marcus is about to reveal something, changing everything." "What happened when you tried to speak up before?" I asked. Marcus's hands trembled as he picked up his clipboard. "Tom Rodriguez asked questions about proper notification procedures last year. Within a month, Catherine had filed complaints with his employer, reported his fence to city code enforcement, and spread rumors about his family finances. Tom resigned from the board and moved out of state to escape the harassment." The fear in Marcus's voice was real. Catherine had weaponized the entire system against anyone challenging her power. But his professional conscience was clearly eating him alive. "Marcus," I said, "what if I told you I've already recorded violations across 17 military families? Catherine's retaliation power is about to disappear." His eyes widened. "You found others?" "Bill Thompson, Linda Santos, Sarah Chen, the list goes on. Catherine's been running an unlawful campaign of discrimination, and she's been creating evidence of her own crimes through improper notification procedures." Sophia stepped closer to Marcus, her voice steady for the first time in weeks. "If Jake can protect you from retaliation, would you help us protect other families like mine?" Marcus looked at the healing garden, then at Sophia's hopeful face, then back toward the street where Catherine's golf cart might appear at any moment. His internal struggle played out across his features, professional ethics warring with personal survival instincts. "I've been recording everything in my case notes," he whispered finally. "Catherine's tactics, the procedural violations, the discriminatory enforcement patterns. If you can guarantee protection from retaliation." "Consider it guaranteed," I said. For the first time since arriving, Marcus smiled, and Catherine Whitmore had just lost her inside man. 2 days after Marcus's revelation, Catherine ambushed me at the VA office where I worked as a communications specialist, her golf cart screeching to a halt in the parking lot as I walked toward the building. She'd brought backup this time, board members Patricia Wells and Harold Martinez flanking her like bodyguards as she marched through the automatic doors with a folder of documents. "Mr. Martinez," Catherine announced loudly enough for the entire waiting room to hear, "you have 48 hours to remove that garden or face immediate action with daily fines of $500. Every conversation in the lobby stopped. Veterans in wheelchairs, families waiting for appointments, my co-workers behind the reception desk. Everyone turned to witness Catherine's public intimidation attempt. She didn't realize she'd just walked into a building full of people who'd spent years defending others against bullies. "Mrs. Whitmore," I said calmly, "this is my workplace. Whatever HOA business you have can be discussed through proper channels." "The proper channel is you following the law," she snapped, waving her folder. "But since you want to play games, we're also requiring your sister undergo a mental competency evaluation to determine if she's capable of homeownership." The lobby went dead silent. Patricia Wells shifted uncomfortably beside Catherine, clearly not expecting this escalation. Harold looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. But Catherine pressed on, oblivious to the atmosphere she'd created. "Sophia's obvious mental instability makes her unfit to maintain property in our community," Catherine continued. "If she can't follow simple HOA guidelines, perhaps she shouldn't own a home at all." Staff Sergeant Mike Rodriguez, sitting in his wheelchair near the window, slowly pulled out his phone and started recording. Within seconds, every veteran in the lobby had their cameras rolling, capturing Catherine's discriminatory tirade against a combat veteran with PTSD. "Ma'am," said Jennifer Walsh, our head counselor, stepping forward with the kind of calm power coming from managing crisis situations, "you're making discriminatory statements about a disabled veteran in a federal facility. I strongly suggest you reconsider your approach." Catherine's face flushed red, but she doubled down. "I don't care if she's a veteran. Mental illness doesn't give someone the right to violate community standards." My hands started shaking with barely controlled fury, but my training kicked in. Record everything. Stay calm. Let the enemy expose themselves. Around the lobby, phones captured every word of Catherine's meltdown, while my co-workers exchanged glances promising this wouldn't be forgotten. "Mrs. Whitmore," I said, my voice steady despite the rage building inside me, "you've just made discriminatory statements about a disabled veteran in front of multiple witnesses, threatened unlawful fines using improperly authorized papers, and demanded medical evaluations you have no power to require. Drop a like if you've ever watched a bully dig their own grave, because Catherine is about to learn why you never attack a veteran's family in front of other veterans." "The HOA has full power to maintain community standards," she declared, apparently not noticing every person in the lobby was now staring at her with open hostility. "What HOA?" I asked. "Because I've reviewed your incorporation papers, and they're expired. Your board lacks proper authorization for enforcement actions, and your notification procedures violate state law. You have about as much jurisdiction as a mall security guard." Patricia Wells tugged Catherine's arm. "Maybe we should discuss this privately." But Catherine was on a roll. "Your sister is a liability to this community, and if you don't remove that garden voluntarily, we'll force you out through action, destroying both your finances and her fragile mental state." The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Mike Rodriguez wheeled his chair directly in front of Catherine, his recording still running. "Ma'am," he said in the calm voice of someone who'd survived 3 tours in Iraq, "I suggest you leave this building immediately before you say something ending up in federal court." Catherine looked around the lobby for the first time, finally noticing the wall of hostile faces surrounding her. Every veteran, every family member, every staff person, was staring at her with the kind of controlled anger coming from watching someone attack their own. "This isn't over," she hissed, backing toward the door with Patricia and Harold trailing behind her like embarrassed children. "No," I agreed, "it's not. But next time you threaten my family, make sure you're not doing it on camera in front of 20 witnesses." As the doors closed behind them, the lobby erupted in supportive voices, veterans offering contacts, staff members promising official incident reports, families sharing their own HOA horror stories. Catherine had just turned my fight into everyone's fight, and somewhere in those phone recordings was evidence destroying her completely. That evening, I sat at my home computer with Sophia beside me, both of us surrounded by printouts, notebooks, and 3 cups of coffee as I applied my military communications expertise to dissect the HOA's digital procedures. The routine investigation quickly became something much darker, a digital paper trail of violations making my blood run cold. "Start with their official website," Sophia suggested, her hands steadier now, with a concrete mission. "If they're required to post meeting minutes and violation procedures, it should all be there." I pulled up the Meadowbrook HOA website, immediately noticing the amateur design and confusing navigation. The violation notification system was buried 3 clicks deep in an administrative procedures section most residents would never find. Our violation notice appeared in a list of current actions with no identifying information except our address, no certified mail tracking, no delivery confirmation, no proper formatting. "Sophia, look at this," I said, pointing to the timestamp. "They posted our violation notice at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. State law requires notification during normal business hours with reasonable opportunity for response." As Sophia organized screenshots by date and violation type, I dug deeper into the website's structure. The board meeting minutes section was a disaster. Meetings discussing individual violations weren't posted at all. Required public notices were missing or dated incorrectly, and disability accommodation procedures were completely absent from all official channels. "Jake," Sophia said, her voice tight with controlled anger, "look at Bill Thompson's case. They posted his Memorial Garden violation at 2:30 a.m. on a Sunday, then started the countdown clock for his response deadline immediately. I cross-referenced the Bill's case with state notification requirements, recording each violation of proper procedure. Then, Linda Santos's case, same pattern. Sarah Chen's therapy dog violation, same unlawful timing and notification failures. Case after case revealed identical procedural violations, invalidating Catherine's entire enforcement campaign. "This is beautiful," I muttered, screenshot after screenshot, capturing Catherine's disregard for requirements. "She's been creating evidence of her own crimes for 2 years. Sophia pulled up the HOA's incorporation papers from the state database, her photography training making her excellent at spotting inconsistencies. "Jake, their corporate registration expired 8 months ago. They've been operating without authority since January." My heart hammered with excitement as the implications hit me. An unincorporated HOA can't enforce violations, levy fines, or take action. Every threat Catherine's made is worthless. We worked through the night, building a comprehensive evidence package exposing the HOA's complete failure to follow procedures. Improper notification timing, missing board authorizations, expired corporate standing, absent disability accommodation processes. Catherine had violated so many laws, her entire enforcement power was fundamentally invalid. Drop a like if you love watching bullies accidentally record their own downfall, because what we found next proves Catherine has been building our case for us. "Look at this," Sophia said, pointing to a hidden admin section she'd accessed through cached Google searches. "Catherine's been sending herself emails approving violations without board votes. She's been acting as a one-person dictatorship for months. I recorded every email, every unauthorized approval, every violation of proper board procedures. Catherine hadn't just been targeting military families. She'd been operating an unlawful enforcement scheme violating state corporate law, federal disability rights, and basic due process requirements. By 4 a.m., we had assembled a digital evidence package destroying Catherine's power completely. Screenshots time-stamped every violation of notification requirements. Corporate records proved the HOA lacked standing, and Catherine's own emails recorded her unauthorized decision-making process. "Sophia," I said, leaning back in my chair as exhaustion mixed with triumph. "We don't just have evidence of procedural violations. We have proof Catherine's been running a criminal enterprise disguised as an HOA." Sophia smiled, the first genuine happiness I'd seen from her in months. "Mom would be proud. We're not just protecting her garden. We're protecting everyone Catherine's been terrorizing." Looking at our evidence spread across the desk, I felt the same satisfaction coming from completing a successful mission in Afghanistan. Catherine thought she was fighting some overwhelmed veteran she could intimidate into submission. Instead, she'd been building the evidence ending her reign of terror completely. The next morning, I woke to the sound of truck engines rumbling in our driveway. Catherine's landscapers had arrived to prepare for garden removal with chainsaws, shovels, and equipment designed to destroy everything Mom had built. Sophia heard them from her bedroom and came running outside in her pajamas, her face wild with panic as she saw strangers approaching her sanctuary. "No, no, no!" Sophia screamed, throwing herself between the lead worker and Mom's rosemary plants. "You can't touch this. This is my medicine." She dropped to her knees in the herb bed, clawing at the soil around the rosemary Mom had planted during her final week alive, her breathing becoming rapid and shallow as a full panic attack took hold. The landscapers backed away, clearly uncomfortable with the situation they had walked into, but their supervisor was checking his phone for instructions. "Sir," the supervisor called to me, "we have a work order to clear this area. The lady who hired us said the homeowner was expecting us." Mrs. Patterson from next door came running over, still in her bathrobe, as Sophia's screams grew more desperate. "Jake, what's happening? Is Sophia okay?" I was already on my phone, calling Dr. Williams while trying to calm Sophia down. "It's okay, Sophia. They're not taking the garden. Nobody's touching Mom's plants." But Sophia was beyond hearing me, hyperventilating as she wrapped her arms around the raised bed, like she could physically protect every herb through sheer will. This wasn't just anxiety. This was trauma response, her mind reverting to combat mode where everything precious could be destroyed without warning. Dr. Williams arrived within 10 minutes, immediately recognizing the severity of Sophia's breakdown. She knelt beside my sister in the dirt, speaking in the calm, measured tones coming from years of treating combat veterans with PTSD. "Sophia, you're safe. You're at home. Your brother is here, and nobody is going to harm your mother's garden," Dr. Williams said, her hands steady on Sophia's shoulders as the panic attack slowly subsided. The landscapers stood awkwardly by their trucks, clearly wanting to leave this emotional minefield, while I called Catherine to demand an explanation. "The 48 hours are up," Catherine said coldly when she answered. "Those workers are removing the violation as scheduled." "Catherine, you just triggered a severe PTSD episode in a combat veteran," I said, my voice shaking with fury. "Your unauthorized landscapers nearly sent my sister to the hospital. Maybe she should be in a hospital if she can't handle normal property maintenance." Dr. Williams took my phone, her professional composure masking the steel in her voice. "Mrs. Whitmore, this is Dr. Sarah Williams, Sophia Martinez's treating psychiatrist. Your actions today constitute harassment of a disabled veteran and could set her recovery back by months. This garden isn't landscaping, it's medical equipment as essential as any prescription medication." I watched Sophia slowly stand up, soil still clinging to her hands as she looked at the landscapers with growing awareness of what had almost happened. The sacred space Mom had created, the rosemary for memory, the lavender for calm, the sage for grounding, had almost been destroyed by strangers who didn't understand what they were demolishing. Drop a like if you've ever had to fight to protect something irreplaceable, because what happens next changes everything. "Dr. Williams," I said, taking back the phone, "if Sophia loses this garden, what would happen to her recovery? Potentially catastrophic setback. Hospitalization wouldn't be unusual. The horticultural therapy program your mother designed is the cornerstone of Sophia's PTSD management strategy. Standing in that sacred space, watching my sister fight for every breath while Catherine's hired destroyers waited for permission to tear apart our family's healing, I felt something crystallize inside me. This wasn't about property rules or community standards anymore. This was about survival, Sophia's survival, our family's survival, and the survival of every military family Catherine had targeted with her unlawful campaign. I looked at the landscapers, then at Sophia clinging to Mom's rosemary plant, then at Dr. Williams recording everything for her medical records. Catherine had just provided me with witnesses to disability discrimination, medical testimony about the garden's necessity, and evidence of harassment strengthening our federal case. Pack up your equipment, I told the landscapers. This job is canceled, and if anyone contacts you about returning to this property, tell them to call my lawyer first. As their trucks pulled away, I helped Sophia to her feet, soil still under her fingernails from defending Mom's final gift. She looked up at me with the kind of clarity coming after surviving combat. "Jake," she whispered, "we can't let her do this to other families." Standing in Mom's garden with my sister's hand in mine, I made a promise ending Catherine Whitmore's reign of terror forever. Every skill from my military training, every violation I'd recorded, every witness I'd gathered, all of it was about to be deployed in defense of the people who'd served our country. Catherine had just declared war on the wrong family. That evening, my phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "Need to talk? Murphy's Diner on Route 9. Come alone, 8 p.m. The message felt like something from my deployment days, urgent, secretive, and potentially game-changing. Murphy's Diner sat 20 minutes outside Meadowbrook, a classic chrome and vinyl establishment where truckers and night shift workers grabbed coffee without worrying about HOA politics. I found Marcus in the back corner booth, hunched over a cup of coffee with his shoulders rigid like he expected Catherine to materialize from the kitchen-wielding violation notices. "Jake," he said as I slid into the opposite seat, "what happened to Sophia today? I can't stay silent anymore." The waitress brought me coffee without asking, the kind of strong brew keeping people awake during difficult conversations. Marcus's hands shook as he pulled a manila envelope from his jacket, thick with papers rustling like secrets being revealed. "I've been recording Catherine's violations for 18 months, Marcus said, his voice barely above a whisper. "My social work license requires me to report institutional abuse of vulnerable populations. But I've been too scared to act because I've seen what she does to people challenging her power." He spread the envelope's contents across the table, printed emails, meeting transcripts, violation tracking spreadsheets looking like military intelligence reports. My communications training kicked in immediately, recognizing the work of someone building a case. "Marcus, this is incredible work," I said, scanning emails where Catherine explicitly discussed avoiding proper notification procedures. "How long have you been collecting this?" "Since my first board meeting when she laughed about creative enforcement strategies for dealing with problem residents." His voice carried the weight of months of ethical compromise. "Jake, she's been deliberately targeting military families because she thinks you won't know how to fight back through proper channels." One email chain made my blood boil. Catherine instructing Patricia Wells to schedule board meetings when Marcus and other dissenting members had work conflicts, ensuring unanimous votes for her enforcement actions. Another showed her bragging about posting violation notices at impossible hours to minimize resident response time. "Look at this one," Marcus said, pointing to a message dated 3 weeks ago. Catherine admits she's never processed a single disability accommodation request because she considers them excuses for special treatment. Drop a like if you've ever discovered the smoking gun evidence changing everything, because what Marcus shows me next proves Catherine has been running a criminal operation disguised as community management. The most damaging paper was Catherine's response to a board member asking about proper procedures. Proper procedures are suggestions for people who lack the backbone to maintain community standards. I've been ignoring those requirements for years, without consequences because residents are too intimidated to challenge proper power. "Marcus," I said, photographing each paper with military precision, "this isn't just procedural violation evidence. This is confession to civil rights violations, corporate fraud, and conspiracy to deprive citizens of due process rights." His relief was visible as he watched me record his evidence. "I've been carrying this guilt for months, knowing I was failing my professional ethics by staying silent while Catherine terrorized vulnerable families. When I saw Sophia's panic attack today, you couldn't watch anymore, I finished. Exactly. But Jake, if I testify against Catherine, she'll destroy my career like she destroyed Tom Rodriguez. I need guarantees about protection from retaliation. I looked across the table at this man who'd risked everything to collect evidence saving our community. Marcus had been trapped between his professional conscience and personal survival, but Sophia's breakdown had finally pushed him past his breaking point. Marcus, Catherine's been operating without jurisdiction for 8 months. Every violation she's issued, every fine she's threatened, every enforcement action she's taken has been fundamentally invalid because the HOA's corporate registration expired. His eyes widened. You found that? Sophia and I spent all night recording Catherine's violations of state law, federal disability requirements, and basic corporate governance. She's been running an unlawful enforcement scheme violating so many laws that challenging her isn't just possible, it's inevitable. Marcus leaned back in the booth, exhaling like he'd been holding his breath for months. If her power is already invalidated by corporate violations, then she can't retaliate against you for exposing crimes having no standing anyway, I said. Marcus, your evidence doesn't just support our case, it completes it. Catherine's own words prove she's been deliberately violating laws she knew she was required to follow. For the first time since I'd met him, Marcus smiled without looking over his shoulder. Jake, there's something else? Catherine's been skimming money from the HOA maintenance fund to pay for her personal landscaping projects. I have bank records showing unauthorized expenditures constituting embezzlement. As we packed up the evidence ending Catherine's reign of terror, I realized Marcus hadn't just provided papers. He'd provided the moral standing coming from someone risking everything to protect vulnerable people from institutional abuse. Catherine Whitmore was about to discover her biggest mistake wasn't targeting military families, it was underestimating the courage of people who'd sworn oaths to protect others. Back home from Murphy's Diner, I spread Marcus's evidence across my dining room table like intelligence reports from a forward operating base, each paper representing another breach in Catherine's defenses. The manila envelope's contents covered every inch of our oak table: emails, meeting transcripts, financial records, and violation tracking sheets painting a picture of corruption spanning 2 years. Sophia emerged from her bedroom, drawn by the rustle of papers and the focused energy reminding her of my pre-deployment briefings. Jake, what's all this? This is how we end Catherine's war against military families, I said, arranging Marcus's papers chronologically, while my strategic planning training kicked into overdrive. We're not fighting individual violations anymore. We're dismantling her entire unlawful operation. I pulled out my laptop and began creating the kind of detailed tactical analysis keeping my communications unit alive through 3 Afghan deployments. First priority, formal complaints to the state HOA Oversight Division, recording notification violations, invalidating every enforcement action Catherine had taken in the past year. Sophia, help me organize these emails by violation type, I said, handing her a stack of Marcus's printouts. I need to build timelines showing Catherine's pattern of deliberately avoiding procedures. As Sophia sorted papers with her photographer's eye for detail, I mapped out our multi-pronged counterattack. The beauty of Catherine's crimes was their nature. She hadn't just violated individual procedures, she'd corrupted the entire enforcement system, making every action she'd taken worthless. My second target, an ADA discrimination complaint for federal review, using Dr. Williams's medical records and Catherine's own emails admitting she ignored disability accommodation requests. Federal civil rights violations carried serious penalties, destroying Catherine's power permanently. Look at this timeline, Sophia said, spreading violation notices across the table in chronological order. Catherine's been escalating her unlawful tactics every month, getting bolder because nobody challenged her procedures. I photographed each paper with military precision, building digital evidence packages surviving scrutiny. Catherine's own words would condemn her, emails bragging about ignoring requirements, meeting minutes showing unauthorized decision-making, financial records proving embezzlement of HOA funds. Drop a like if you love watching a strategic plan come together. Because what we're building here will end Catherine's reign of terror permanently. My third strategy focused on the HOA's expired corporate registration, invalidating their standing to enforce any violations in whatsoever. An unincorporated entity couldn't levy fines, take action, or claim power over private property. Catherine had been running a criminal enterprise disguised as legitimate governance. Jake, Sophia said, pointing to a spreadsheet Marcus had created. He's recorded 47 families who received improperly formatted violation notices in the past year. I cross-referenced Marcus's violation, tracking with state notification requirements, recording each instance where Catherine had violated proper procedures. The pattern was overwhelming. Midnight website postings, missing certified mail delivery, absent board authorization, discriminatory enforcement targeting protected classes. My tactical approach would be surgical and devastating. Instead of fighting Catherine's individual violations, I'd prove she lacked jurisdiction to issue violations at all. Without proper corporate standing, valid notification procedures, or board authorization, every enforcement action she'd taken was fundamentally invalid. Sophia, we're not just protecting Mom's garden anymore, I said, organizing evidence into prosecution-ready files. We're liberating an entire community from an unlawful dictatorship. I created detailed timelines showing how Catherine's actions violated state corporate law, federal disability rights, and basic due process requirements. Each violation built upon the previous one, creating a comprehensive case surviving any challenge Catherine might attempt. My final preparation involved positioning our evidence for maximum impact. State complaints triggering official investigation, federal civil rights violations bringing serious penalties, and public exposure destroying Catherine's community support. Jake, Sophia said, watching me organize our evidence with military efficiency. Mom would be proud. You're not just fighting for our family. You're protecting everyone Catherine has terrorized. Looking at our tactical plans spread across the dining room table, I felt the same focused confidence coming from completing mission planning in Afghanistan. Every paper had been verified, every requirement confirmed, every strategic advantage secured. Catherine Whitmore had spent 2 years building the evidence destroying her completely, and she'd just handed it to someone trained to use information warfare against enemies of the innocent. Tomorrow, her unlawful empire would begin crumbling under the weight of her own recorded crimes. The following week, I transformed the Meadowbrook Veterans Center into a command post for gathering evidence burying Catherine's unlawful operation permanently. The center's meeting room filled with affected families, experts from my veteran network, and records painting a comprehensive picture of civil rights violations spanning 2 years. Bill Thompson arrived first, carrying a shoebox full of improperly formatted violation notices targeting his memorial flag garden. Jake, I never realized these notices were supposed to come by certified mail, he said, spreading papers across the conference table. Catherine just tucked them in my door like pizza flyers. Linda Santos brought her late husband's workshop violation files, each one missing required board authorization, signatures, and proper formatting. Miguel built that workshop with permits from the city, she explained to Dr. Sarah Mitchell, a veterans' rights attorney I'd contacted through my deployment network. Catherine's trying to force me to demolish it without following any procedures. Dr. Mitchell reviewed Linda's papers with the precision of someone who'd spent years fighting institutional discrimination. These violation notices wouldn't hold up in small claims court, let alone federal court, she confirmed. The HOA's complete failure to follow proper notification procedures invalidates their enforcement power. As families shared their experiences, I recorded each case of unlawful enforcement, midnight website postings instead of certified mail, missing board meeting minutes, absent disability accommodation procedures, selective targeting of military families while ignoring identical violations at board members' properties. Sophia worked alongside Dr. Williams to record the medical necessity of Mom's healing garden, creating clinical evidence strengthening our federal disability discrimination case. This horticultural therapy program represents 18 months of treatment planning, Dr. Williams explained to our growing team. Removing it would constitute denial of reasonable accommodation under federal law. Drop a like if you've ever seen a community come together to fight injustice, because what happened next proves bullies can't survive when their victims stop fighting alone. Sarah Chen brought records showing Catherine had threatened to ban her therapy dog from outdoor areas, violating both HOA bylaws and federal service animal protections. Catherine told me emotional support animals weren't real service animals, Sarah testified, her voice steady with controlled anger. She said military PTSD was an excuse for special treatment. David Rodriguez provided evidence of discriminatory enforcement, violations for parking his work truck in his own driveway, while board member Patricia Wells kept 3 commercial vehicles permanently stationed at her property. Catherine's been targeting us because we served overseas, David said. She thinks military families won't know how to fight back through proper channels. Dr. Mitchell connected us with state HOA oversight investigators who confirmed Catherine's notification violations warranted formal investigation. Pattern evidence of procedural failures, this extensive suggests intentional deprivation of due process rights, explained investigator James Walsh via video call. We'll open an official inquiry immediately. My veteran network provided expertise transforming our evidence gathering into prosecution. Quality records. Attorney Colonel Register Patricia Reeves reviewed our federal civil rights complaint. Catherine's own emails admitting she ignores disability. Accommodation requests constitute clear ADA violations with serious penalty implications. Marcus arrived quietly, providing additional evidence he'd gathered since our diner meeting. Bank records showing Catherine's embezzlement of HOA maintenance funds. Meeting recordings where she bragged about intimidating military families. Email chains proving she'd manipulated board votes through strategic member exclusion. Marcus, I said, your records prove Catherine's been running a criminal enterprise. This isn't just HOA mismanagement, it's organized fraud targeting vulnerable populations. By week's end, our evidence package was comprehensive and devastating. 47 families affected by unlawful notification procedures, discrimination against military families and disabled residents, corporate violations invalidating the HOA's standing, financial crimes including embezzlement, and Catherine's own recorded confessions to deliberately violating laws she knew she was required to follow. Jake, said Dr. Mitchell, reviewing our completed federal complaint, this case has everything: civil rights violations, corporate fraud, disability discrimination, and pattern evidence of intentional lawbreaking. Catherine won't just lose her HOA power, she'll face serious consequences. Standing in the Veterans Center surrounded by families who'd found courage to fight back, I felt the same pride coming from completing successful missions in Afghanistan. We weren't just protecting individual properties anymore. We were liberating an entire community from unlawful oppression. Sophia looked up from organizing medical records with Dr. Williams. Jake, we did it. We have everything we need to stop Catherine from hurting anyone else. Tomorrow, we'd file complaints triggering state investigation, federal civil rights review, and public exposure ending Catherine's reign of terror. The evidence was overwhelming, the standing was solid, and the moral power was unshakable. Catherine Whitmore was about to discover her biggest mistake wasn't targeting military families. It was underestimating people who'd sworn oaths to protect the innocent from institutional abuse. The morning of our counterattack, I stood in the lobby of the state HOA Oversight Division building, holding 3 thick folders containing evidence destroying Catherine's unlawful empire permanently. The manila folders felt heavy with the weight of justice. Formal complaints recording violations, federal civil rights filings, and comprehensive evidence packages representing weeks of strategic preparation. Mr. Martinez, said Deputy Director Carol Stevens, reviewing our initial filing, the scope of procedural violations you've recorded is extraordinary. We'll open an immediate investigation with full regulatory power. I handed her our primary evidence package, Marcus's recorded proof of Catherine's deliberate avoidance of procedures, targeting of military families, and explicit admissions she'd been ignoring state notification requirements for years. Each violation was cross-referenced, time-stamped, and corroborated by multiple witnesses. Deputy Stevens, I said, this isn't just individual HOA mismanagement. Catherine Whitmore has been operating an unincorporated entity as a legitimate power, violating federal disability rights and conducting what amounts to organized fraud against protected populations. As state investigators photographed our evidence, I called Marcus to confirm he was protected under official whistleblower procedures. Marcus, your testimony is crucial for establishing pattern evidence of intentional lawbreaking. The state has guaranteed retaliation protection under civil service statutes. My next stop was the Federal District Court Clerk's office, where I filed our ADA discrimination complaint with supporting medical records from Dr. Williams. The federal filing would trigger Department of Justice review of disability discrimination, violations carrying serious penalties including court-ordered oversight of HOA operations. Sir, said Federal Clerk Maria Gonzalez, reviewing our filing, complaints of this scope typically receive expedited review due to the civil rights implications. You should expect contact from DOJ investigators within 72 hours. Back home, I called an emergency HOA board meeting using the same procedures Catherine had been violating. Proper 48-hour notice, certified mail delivery to all residents, published agenda items, and meeting minutes officially recorded. Unlike Catherine's unlawful enforcement actions, everything we did would follow proper procedures exactly. Sophia helped me prepare presentation materials, exposing Catherine's crimes to the entire community. Jake, are you nervous about confronting her publicly? Sophia, I've briefed generals on battlefield communications failures. Catherine Whitmore doesn't scare me anymore, especially when I have recorded proof of every crime she's committed. My veteran network coordinated media coverage recording Catherine's response to public exposure of her unlawful activities. Local news stations, veterans advocacy organizations, and civil rights groups would witness her attempts to defend the indefensible. Dr. Williams confirmed she'd be present to provide medical testimony about Sophia's disability accommodation needs and the necessity of Mom's Garden. Jake, I'll have clinical records proving that removing Sophia's healing environment would constitute deliberate harm to a disabled veteran. Marcus called to confirm his attendance, his voice steady with newfound confidence. Jake, I'm ready to testify about everything I've recorded. Catherine can't retaliate against evidence proving she's been operating without jurisdiction. As evening approached, I positioned our evidence strategically throughout the community center meeting room. State complaint acknowledgments, federal filing receipts, comprehensive violation records, and Marcus's insider testimony proving Catherine's lawbreaking. Drop a like if you love watching justice finally catch up with bullies who thought they were untouchable, because what happens tomorrow night will change everything. I called affected families to confirm their attendance. Bill Thompson, Linda Santos, Sarah Chen, David Rodriguez, and 17 other military families who'd found courage to stand together against institutional oppression. Each family brought their own evidence of Catherine's unlawful targeting, creating overwhelming proof of discriminatory enforcement. Sophia, I said, reviewing our final preparations. Tomorrow night, Catherine faces everything she's tried to avoid: accountability, public scrutiny, and community judgment. She's been running from proper procedures for 2 years, but there's nowhere left to hide. Standing in our living room surrounded by evidence of Catherine's crimes, I felt the calm confidence coming from thorough mission planning. Every requirement had been met, every strategic advantage secured, every witness prepared for testimony. Catherine Whitmore had built her unlawful empire on the assumption military families wouldn't know how to fight institutional corruption through proper channels. Tomorrow night, she'd discover her biggest miscalculation wasn't underestimating our courage. It was recording her own crimes so thoroughly prosecution would be inevitable. The machinery was activated, public confrontation was staged for maximum impact, and moral power was secured through preparation. Catherine's war against military families was about to end with her complete and permanent defeat. The Meadowbrook Community Center had never seen a crowd like this. Every seat filled with residents, veterans, and media representatives, while overflow attendees lined the walls like witnesses to a public trial. Catherine sat at the head table, flanked by Patricia Wells and Harold Martinez, her usual confident demeanor already cracking as she surveyed the packed room, coming to hear evidence of her crimes. "This emergency meeting will come to order," Catherine announced, her voice strained as camera crews from 3 local news stations positioned themselves for optimal coverage. We're here to address false allegations made by disgruntled residents who refuse to follow community standards. I stood at the presentation podium with Sophia beside me, our evidence organized in prosecution-ready stacks, representing 2 years of Catherine's recorded law-breaking. Mrs. Whitmore, before we begin, I'd like to establish this meeting follows proper procedures: 48-hour certified mail notice, published agenda, and official recording as required by state law. Your procedural lectures don't impress anyone, Catherine snapped, but her eyes darted nervously toward the state HOA oversight investigator who'd positioned herself in the front row with a digital recorder. I clicked to my first presentation slide, Catherine's own email, admitting she'd been ignoring notification requirements for years. This is Catherine Whitmore's response when asked about proper procedures. Proper procedures are suggestions for people who lack the backbone to maintain community standards. The room erupted in angry murmurs as residents recognized the contempt Catherine had shown for their rights. Bill Thompson stood up, his Vietnam veteran cap trembling with rage. Catherine, you've been terrorizing military families with unlawful threats for 2 years. Sit down, old man, Catherine barked, her mask of power finally slipping completely. Your memorial garden violates aesthetic standards regardless of your military service. The crowd's hostility spiked at her dismissive tone toward a decorated veteran, while news cameras captured every word of her discriminatory response. I advanced to the next slide, records of Catherine's targeting military families while ignoring identical violations at board members' properties. Ladies and gentlemen, I continued with military precision, Catherine has issued 47 improperly formatted violation notices to military families in the past year, while 0 violations were issued to her allies with identical property conditions. Patricia Wells shifted uncomfortably beside Catherine, clearly recognizing the liability she'd been complicit in creating. Harold Martinez began reviewing his own violation notices with growing alarm as he realized their complete lack of authority. Drop a like if you love watching bullies face public accountability for their crimes, because Catherine's about to discover her reign of terror is ending tonight. Those allegations are ridiculous, Catherine shouted, standing up as her control over the meeting disintegrated. I have full power to maintain community standards through whatever enforcement methods I deem necessary. Marcus stood up from the audience, his manila envelope of evidence held high like a battle flag. Catherine, I've been recording your violations of procedures for 18 months. Every unauthorized board action, every manipulated vote, every deliberate avoidance of proper notification requirements. Catherine's face went pale as Marcus approached the podium, her power crumbling in real time as her inside ally became her primary accuser. Marcus, you signed off on all those enforcement actions. Under coercion and misinformation, Marcus replied, handing me his evidence folder. Jake, show them the emails where Catherine admits to scheduling board meetings when dissenting members couldn't attend, ensuring unanimous votes for her unlawful enforcement campaign. I displayed Catherine's own words on the presentation screen, emails bragging about manipulating board procedures, ignoring disability accommodation requests, and targeting military families because she believed they wouldn't know how to fight back through proper channels. Furthermore, I announced, the HOA's corporate registration expired 8 months ago, making every enforcement action Catherine has taken fundamentally invalid. She's been operating a criminal enterprise disguised as legitimate governance. Patricia Wells stood up abruptly. I resign from this board, effective immediately. I will not be held liable for unauthorized actions I was misled into supporting. Harold Martinez followed suit. Catherine, you never told us about the expired corporate registration. Every violation we approved was issued without authority. The room buzzed with outrage as residents realized they'd been terrorized by someone with no legitimate power to enforce violations. Catherine looked around desperately for support that had evaporated completely. This meeting is adjourned, Catherine declared, but nobody moved. Mrs. Whitmore, said Deputy Director Stevens from the State Oversight Division, this meeting continues under state power. You're facing formal investigation for violations of HOA governance laws, civil rights violations, and potential criminal charges for operating without corporate standing. As Catherine fled toward the exit with news cameras following her retreat, the community erupted in applause for the military families who'd found courage to fight institutional corruption through proper channels. Standing at the podium with Sophia's hand in mine, I felt the satisfaction coming from using my military training to protect the innocent from organized oppression. Catherine's unlawful empire had crumbled under the weight of her own recorded crimes. Justice had finally caught up with Catherine Whitmore, and our community was free. 2 weeks after Catherine's public humiliation, I stood in Mom's healing garden reading the official letter from the state HOA Oversight Division, vindicating everything we'd fought for. All enforcement actions taken under Catherine Whitmore's leadership are hereby invalidated due to violations of proper notification procedures, expired corporate registration, and failure to follow state-mandated governance requirements. Sophia emerged from the house carrying a basket for herb gathering, her face radiant with the kind of peace I hadn't seen since before her deployment. The morning sunlight caught the dew on Mom's rosemary plants, the same plants Catherine had tried to destroy, now thriving under our protection. "Jake, read me the federal part again," Sophia said, kneeling beside the sage Mom had planted for grounding during panic attacks. I unfolded the Department of Justice letter with satisfaction. Federal investigators have opened formal review of disability discrimination complaints against the Meadowbrook HOA, with particular focus on denial of reasonable accommodations for disabled veterans. Criminal charges for civil rights violations remain under consideration. The sound of approaching footsteps made us both look up as Marcus walked through our back gate, carrying a clipboard, but this time, his shoulders were straight with confidence instead of hunched with fear. As the newly elected interim HOA president, he'd been working overtime to implement proper procedures and restore community trust. "Jake, Sophia," Marcus said, his voice carrying the power coming from doing the right thing. "I wanted to personally deliver the unanimous board resolution, rescinding all of Catherine's unauthorized violations and formally apologizing to affected military families." Sophia stood up, soil still clinging to her hands from tending Mom's herbs. "Marcus, what happened to Catherine?" "Resigned in disgrace and moved out of Meadowbrook entirely," Marcus replied with grim satisfaction. Patricia Wells and Harold Martinez voted to accept her resignation immediately and cooperate fully with state investigators. The community wanted nothing more to do with someone who terrorized military families through unlawful enforcement schemes. As we talked, neighbors began appearing in our backyard. Bill Thompson carrying a small American flag, Linda Santos with her son Tommy, Sarah Chen with her therapy dog, and David Rodriguez with his wife Maria. Word had spread that the official vindication letters had arrived, and the community wanted to celebrate together in the space Catherine had tried to destroy. "Jake," Bill said, his voice thick with emotion, "my memorial garden is safe because you had the courage to fight back when the rest of us felt helpless. You saved more than just your family's herbs. You saved our entire community. Drop a like if you believe justice should always triumph over bullies who abuse their power, because what happened next proves that standing up to institutional corruption creates lasting change." Dr. Williams arrived with official records declaring Mom's garden an essential healing environment that couldn't be modified without medical approval. "Sophia, your recovery progress has been remarkable since the stress of potential garden removal was eliminated. This space isn't just landscaping, it's medical treatment your mother designed with extraordinary insight." As neighbors shared stories of Catherine's unlawful tactics and their relief at her departure, I realized our victory had accomplished something bigger than protecting individual properties. We'd established precedent-shielding military families from future HOA abuse throughout the state, transforming discriminatory enforcement from acceptable practice to prosecutable crime. "Look around," Sophia said, gesturing toward our gathering neighbors. "Mom's garden has become what she always intended, a place where healing happens and community grows stronger." Marcus addressed the group with the confidence of someone who'd found his moral courage. "The new board has implemented transparent procedures, proper notifications, and mandatory training on disability accommodation requirements. Catherine's reign of terror is over permanently. Standing in Mom's healing garden, surrounded by the military families we had protected from institutional abuse, I felt the deep satisfaction coming from using my training to serve others. Sophia picked fresh herbs for our dinner, while neighbors shared laughter instead of fear. And the sacred space Mom had created continued fulfilling its purpose, healing trauma and nurturing hope. Catherine Whitmore had tried to destroy our family's legacy through unlawful intimidation, but instead, she'd united a community of veterans who understood some battles are worth fighting, regardless of personal cost. If you want more stories of homeowners standing up to HOA tyranny, hit subscribe right now, share your story in the comments, and let me know where you're watching from. Our garden was safe, our community was protected, and justice had finally prevailed.